Hey, everybody. It's my fault we're starting late. I had too many traffic lights this morning. It's my fault. I already have vacation mind on. I'm sorry.
Shouldn't started early in the morning.
Yeah, it is. Welcome, everybody. This is the Impact Litigation Group. We have John and Maine Bailey, Aaron Hall, Greg Zisson. We're going to be talking today about our DV 2022 litigation. I got a little blog logo right there. We're talking about onboarding. Aaron, do you want to kick this off a little bit?
I would love to. I want to talk. We're going to talk about some of the logistics and whatnot on this call as well. But I wanted to start by giving a kind of an overview of where we are in the DV program, because some people who were selected for 2022 might not have been following as closely for 2020 and 2021. And I'll also explain just quickly our theory of the case. So for those who don't know, our last president, President Trump, hated the diversity visa lottery program. He hated it. And he tried to convince Congress to get rid of it. He failed to do that. But instead, when COVID came along, he used that as an excuse to eliminate it, along with some other immigration categories. So he did that for a while. He got sued. He used this law called 212F to not even process visa applications based on a proclamation, a presidential proclamation. He got sued a bunch, including by us, and lost a bunch. And then, but even after losing those suits, he had done something else. In November of 2020, his administration deprioritized diversity visa. Hello, James. James joined us.
Hey, James.
He deprioritized them, saying basically they're the last priority. Consulates, if you happen to get around to them, great. If not, focus on other stuff. So that's where we were as of last year. And for the DV 2021 folks, the federal court came in at the end of the year and said, one, you weren't allowed to do that no visa ban stuff, and two, that deprioritization was completely illegal. So what did they do after that? They said that they wouldn't use the priority scheme for 2022, but they still are not processing visas. So officially, that priority scheme that was found illegal has been rescinded, but the consulates are still in practice apparently using it because they're not processing visas. And how do we know this? Because the numbers bear out that other types of visas are being processed at pre-pandemic rates or better. I was running the numbers, and for the immigrant total immediate relative visas, the expected fiscal year total this year is over 200,000. That is above the 2019. That is exceeding the 2019 pace. And so it is not that the consulates are shut down for COVID. It is that they're not processing the visas. As of 2 days ago, I think they had issued 300 and some total through a quarter of the year.
Now, Aaron, I want to interrupt you for a second there. It's important that you pointed out the immediate relative numbers. Why is that important?
That is what the courts have been using as a measuring stick, because what the government says when we file a lawsuit is they say, Judge, we can't help it. It's because of COVID. We're shut down. We're trying to be careful. But the immediate relative cases also require interviews. And so they're using them as a measuring stick to say, well, how healthy is the processing systems? How affected is all processing by COVID? And in the past, they've discounted the number of diversity visas that they think should have been issued because, yeah, there's been a pandemic and processing of all visas was down. So it makes sense that it would be somewhat down, but not to the extent that it was down. And now there's no longer that excuse.
Aaron, I just wanted to add to while Washington isn't pushing out a prioritization mandate to the consulates, they've told the consulates that they can basically manage on their own. And some of the consulates actually are quite explicitly saying that they have a prioritization scheme where they say at our consulate, we are prioritizing this particular group, which doesn't make it any more legal. whether it's coming from Washington or being or the consulates are being given that authority to break the law on their own. So that's we know that in fact there is prioritization. It's just decentralized.
So the way that I've been trying to conceptualize it for myself, and I explained this on our live stream for our firm yesterday, is I'm imagining, indulge me for a second, but I'm imagining like a highway that's running next to a cliff, and you're a passenger in a car driving along this highway, and the driver turns towards the cliff. You're going towards the cliff, and you say, "Hey, stop driving us off this cliff." And the driver says, "Okay," and takes his hands off the wheel and his foot off the accelerator. But you're still going off the cliff because he's pointed that way. What you actually need is corrective action. And so the fact that they took away the official prioritization scheme from headquarters isn't enough, because what's the inertia of all the consulates having deprioritized everything and continuing to do so, as Greg said, is still taking this program off the cliff, which is not legal. That's not what Congress said. So what we're asking the judge to do is say, basically, to the consulates and or the Department of State, you need to process these at pre-pandemic levels, because you're processing other things at pre-pandemic levels, and steer this car back onto the road and get processing going back where it would be. And so that's basically our theory of the case. They're not doing enough, and just rescinding this and letting the consulates continue to not process the visas is not enough. We're a quarter of the way through the year. We have barely any visas issued. And as everybody on this call saw, in Gomez, that's the 2020 case, they issued a status report saying that actually they're really trying to front load the 2022 processing. So this is supposed to be the peak of their processing right now.
I have to tell you, that took, I don't know what kind of chutzpah exists at the Department of State.
That's what the
that
word
took
is.
a trainload of chutzpah to say that when the numbers were public. I mean, it's just like, holy jamolies, Batman. That's just a crazy number. Now, Aaron, one of the things you point out that I think is fascinating, Department of State at their headquarters created the prioritization program. So they believed they were telling consulates what to do. They supposedly rescind the prioritization program, but then they say, but you can do whatever you want. Because they're going to say, well, the consular officers they have control over their consulate. Well, no, they don't. You told them to prioritize in the first place. So it's really very much a double standard. I think it's indefensible. Keep in mind, we've been saying since the end of the Go case for DV 2022, we're going to wait and see the first quarter numbers. Well, we have the first quarter numbers. Now, of course, they came out like we thought they would. We were disappointed because you would think the department would learn their lesson. They did make one change, which is important, and I want Greg to talk to this, and that is that you no longer send documents to the KCC. But Greg, the KCC is still involved, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, they're still involved, and they still have a function, which is basically they're the data warehouse for all of this. So, that's one change that in theory should help. The other one was waiving interviews for non-immigrant cases, which is a fairly dramatic reduction in workload across the world for consulates, which should give them more capacity. But we're not seeing any evidence that they're using it for DV. I mean, that's the problem here, is that they've taken all these steps but there's nothing in the numbers to indicate that they are actually working any more cases than they were before any of this.
That's actually kind of shocking, isn't it? Now, because consular officers are trained across the spectrum. A consular officer can do an immigrant visa, they can do a non-immigrant visa. They do have specialized e-visa training, but generally speaking, they can do both IV and NIV cases. And yet I have not received in my office a huge surge of immigrant visa appointments across the spectrum.
Right.
To the contrary, it's still perceptibly, except for immediate relatives, pretty darn slow.
Yeah, the other thing that's supposed to have been happening over the last year is the massive hiring surge at the State Department to be able. I mean, it was a legitimate issue in the Trump years, where there was a lot of people quitting the agency that didn't want to work for the last president, and they it's a year in on this administration. I guess in a week we're hitting the 1 year anniversary. My understanding was that there had been a lot of hiring. There was a lot of pent up demand, a lot of people who wanted to work in the Foreign Service, that as soon as the administrations changed, they started applying and State Department started hiring. So they should also, at the same time that COVID is waning, that they have some of these new procedures, they should also be getting a lot more bodies. So again, we're not seeing any evidence of change. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing fewer applications being adjudicated than this time last year.
Except for immediate relatives, who are they again,
Right.
and that's because of an illegal prioritization. And Aaron made a point. Judge Maida specifically found that it was illegal to prioritize visas.
Right.
The government tried to argue that it wasn't, and he said, no, it's not. Maybe Greg, so that's kind of the history and about why we're moving forward now with litigation. Now, we want to point something else out. Last year, in 2020, November, we did file a very early lawsuit on DV 2021. In fact, we filed in November, 1 month after the program started, because we had the data that didn't issue any DVs. We filed that case in California for a very specific reason, not related to today's discussion. And we actually filed a preliminary injunction. It was fully briefed. It was argued before Christmas with the federal judge in California on the DV issue. And the judge, and of course, it was the election. I think we filed right before the election. Mm-hmm. And of course, Biden won, much to some people's surprise around the country. The judge saw that, and I think he decided he was going to wait and see what.
I think the judge was pretty convinced that Biden was going to fix the problem.
Really convinced, and there's a reason he was completely convinced, because President Biden has specifically said that what President Trump did to diversity visa applicants was terrible.
Right.
And yet he himself allowed the exact same thing to continue to happen. Of course, the judge didn't know that. And the judge essentially dismissed the case after President Biden came out and lifted the bans, because at that time, the bans were the focus, not necessarily the illegal prioritization that was ongoing, although that became part of the lawsuit, was subsequently filed. And one thing that's really important now, why are we filing in January or early February? Why are we doing that? Because the judge, and we've always had the same judge, Judge Maida has been the judge on these cases and could very well end up being the judge again on this litigation. He specifically said in one oral argument, why didn't you file sooner? Specifically said that. Why didn't you file sooner? Well, be careful what you wish for sometimes. But it's important now, because even we have other evidence for DV against DV 2022. Department of State has said they're going to deprioritize DV 2022. Isn't that the takeaway from their affidavit, Aaron? They're going to up front load, which they clearly haven't done, unless they're miraculously going to do 10,000 a month in January, February, March. And then what are going to do the rest of the year? And we all know they're not going to do 10,000 DVs in January, February, March. You're not going to do that. Yeah. Somebody did note online that they perhaps have scheduled up to there's currently scheduled 4,000 DVs, which would get them to 4,200 DVs issued in the first 5 months of the year. That's not anywhere near where they need to be. So I do want to ask you this, Greg. So where are we, Greg, right now?
As far as the
litigation moving forward, where are we?
Yeah, so we're onboarding. We have an FAQ, a detailed FAQ explaining how the case works, and answering the most common questions. This is the third year of we're doing this, so we've kind of gotten some of the kinks out. And if you go to that page, there's two things that are there that are. Well, there's three basic steps. One is there's an engagement letter that every plaintiff has to complete. So it's basically just answering questions, and it generates a document that has your e-signature on it. Two is payment, which is explained there, which is we've kept it at the same level we had last year. And the third is something called a declaration, where we need each of our plaintiffs to be able to explain what harm they will suffer if they don't get their DV, and it gives you a chance to basically tell your story and tell why what this means for you and what will happen in your life if this is not approved before September 30th, or even if it's extended, what happens if you don't get that visa. Once we have and from a timing perspective, the plan is to file in the next couple weeks the case. I don't think we have an exact day that we are going to file it on. And we may wait and see on a little bit more data to come in from the government before we file, just to have the most current numbers on there. So if that delays us a couple of days, it does. But that's how it will work. And this system, these apps that we've created work quite well. We've used them now for a number of cases. And the other thing that we do after for our plaintiffs is we will have weekly updates and add this case in on our weekly updates of the mass cases that we work on to give you an idea of sort of procedurally what's happening on there. And you'll have the opportunity to post questions, and we do answer most of the questions that are asked in our weekly YouTube live streams. So that's something I think that people appreciate, is the opportunity to get pretty regular feedback as far as what's happening on the litigation. And then also we will give you guys the URL. So in a lot of cases, you're able to listen to the arguments in front of the judge live. And I don't know, which of our lawyers. It's usually Chuck or Aaron are the ones that are making the arguments in front of the judge. But you'll usually have the opportunity to hear that live as well, which I think a lot of people appreciate also.
It's fun to make the arguments. You don't get to see the video, unfortunately, if we have video. The last Go arguments, of course, were in person in Washington, D.C., and Greg and I were there for that. That was a fun day. That was a good day.
A little window in COVID where we're having hearings in person.
It was it was actually a very strange, surreal kind of environment in the courthouse, which was kind of spooky in some ways, but it was really a lot of fun. So we don't know who the judge will be. It's up to the court. When we file, we will indicate that it is related to 2 ongoing cases, both of which are assigned to Judge Mehta. And we'll see if they reassign it to him. They may not do that. Looks like we have Lily joining us. I'm going to put her up here. I don't know if she's going to put her picture on or not, but I'm going to let her join us. Or maybe she sent a private chat. Don't add me. So, Jonna, you have something for people who have already signed up. Jonna, what's your message for them?
Yes, so I am working with Lily and James. We represent your onboarding team, and this is just a friendly reminder that we are receiving a lot of engagement letters and have not received the declarations for all the same plaintiffs who have signed up. So if you have signed up the engagement letter, you're not done. Go ahead and make sure you're making your payment, but also filling out the declaration. So we have all the information we need to make sure you're part of the lawsuit.
And Aaron, we are fixing the payment system so that it accepts ACH payments. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
So that'll be fixed. Don't worry. Nobody not going to proceed without you. We'll get that payment. It's just in the United States, as you may or may not know, it's not common. So it involves an extra step, and we're going to get that set up on the website. Lily, good to see you this morning. Hope you're doing well. So that's kind of explains everything. Do we want to talk about the FAQs at all? Or do we really hit that already, Aaron?
I'm going to pre-address some of the questions in the chat, just because it relates back to what we were talking about before. So I get this question in the chat and also elsewhere about what's the difference between this year and last year, per se, as far as the lawsuit. The difference, there is a significant difference. It's the same, it's a lot of the same issues. It's the same program. And if it ends up with Judge Mehta, he's going to be very familiar with it. But the difference is last year we were challenging the no visa policy, which no longer is at issue, and an official prioritization scheme, which is no longer at issue purportedly. So it's more, the argument will be a little bit different. But the numbers, we believe, speak for themselves. they're not processing these cases, and they are processing all other kinds of cases, and there's no explanation that's legal that could explain that. So that's the differences between the years. I saw one question about numbers that are current, high numbers, low numbers, as far as your case number. It's important to know that that being a plaintiff doesn't mean that your case goes current or something like that. Your case will only be processed if it's current under the Department of State visa bulletin, and the litigation is not going to change that. So whether you benefit from the litigation might depend in part on what your case number is. But I know that during the last round of litigation, we were explaining to the court that when they determine how many people get selected, that the idea from the Department of State is not to create a lottery within a lottery. They're not trying to say, we're going to pick, 150,000 or whatever it is in a given year, and then 55,000 lucky people will get in. No, the idea is they want to pick enough people, just enough people, to fill all the available visas. And so most people during a given year, if they're processing as they should, most people should go current.
And that has been true for the last, even when they weren't processing people. I think it was each of the last 2 years. I think I'm right. In June, in both 20 and 21, the numbers went current.
Right. Britt Simon is in the comments, and I hope he's still here.
Oh, how good! How good!
But he's the numbers guru on there, and he makes a comment that it's hard to say right now exactly what's going to be happening with the numbers, and I appreciate that. Although Britt, I think, can give some historical reference as far as what has happened over the last number of years as far as the number usage on there. But we would anticipate that there will be, that people with high numbers, people with really high numbers may have issues. But if your number is not like super high, like at the highest end, the highest 5%, historically, you should be in good shape. But it's still hard to predict that for sure. So all the necessary warnings on that as far as joining the litigation, that we don't make any guarantees on that. Although, I'm optimistic that most people, that won't be the issue ultimately that keeps them from getting a visa. It will be everything else that we're fighting.
Now, something's really interesting. I was looking at the visa bulletins for January and February, and Africa leaped a year. Africa went from 13,500 to 21,000 in numbers. That's a pretty big leap. Egypt's at 11,000 for February, and they'd gone on from 8. That's a big leap. Asia went from 6 to 8,300. Europe 10 to 13,500. North America, which is really only the Bahamas, it's a 6 to 8. Oceania jumped 60 to 850, and South America went from 900 to 1,200. Those are big number jumps, month over month, especially when there's no visas. Now, Aaron, you have one of your folks, Ryland's going to be interviewing Charlie Oppenheim. Is that correct? Or has he already done that?
Zach.
It's actually Zach. Zach New who's going to be interviewing Charlie Oppenheim. He hasn't done it yet. It's coming up, but that's going to be very, very interesting.
I'll send him some questions.
Here's a question. I don't know if I sent him this or not. Is why do you move the DV lottery forward when no visas have been issued?
Yeah.
Why? Now, obviously, the moving number forward is important if you're in the United States. Now, this is a word, by the way. If you have the capability and you have a valid visitor visa to come to the United States, it is perfectly legitimate for you to come visit the United States. And then after, let's say, 60 days or so, when you're not seeing any progress on your immigrant visa at a consulate, and your number becomes current, it's perfectly legitimate to file an adjustment of status application in the United States. There were far too many people that had that opportunity in DV 20 and DV 2021 who did not understand that option. Again, you can't come here intending to get the green card. But if you change your mind after 60 days or so, you're fine to do that. Now, I will add this. If you're going to do that, use a lawyer who knows your local office. Because these cases are processed locally. And unless you have somebody that's going to be able to call the local office, go with you to the local office, bombard the local office, it's highly possible for you to properly file that application and not get interviewed. Like,
yeah,
be interviewed by September 30th.
It used to be the case that we would discourage people from going the adjustment of status route and pursue consular processing like before the COVID mess and before Trump, because the adjustment of status, that there had been issues with adjustment of status applications not being adjudicated before the deadlines, where the consulates were impeccable as far as getting that done. And it's kind of flipped, where now the USCIS offices seem to be really intent on prioritizing and making sure that those cases get done in a timely manner, whereas the consulates, it's like, we'll get to it when we get to it.
All right. So I think that kind of sums up the stuff we want to talk about. Anything else we're missing before we go and answer some questions, folks?
I wanted to talk about what signing up for the litigation means and what it doesn't. With our team, signing up for the litigation, it's a one-time fee. So we're not going to be asking for future payments if the litigation gets extended or more complicated than we had thought. No, it's one-time fee, and that's it for the case. But we do not represent you individually in your case trying to get your visa. What does that mean? It means we're representing you with the court and with the government attorneys at the court. But we do not represent you with the consulate. So we won't be contacting the consulate on your behalf. We won't be entering our appearances with the consulate on your behalf. And it's important to know that, because sometimes people reach out and ask us to do something like that, but we can't. We're not authorized to communicate directly with the consulate on your behalf. We are authorized to communicate on your behalf in the context of this lawsuit to the court and to the attorneys representing the Department of State in court.
And of course, you can always hire your own lawyer to deal with the consulate on these issues. I will tell you, most DV folks don't have lawyers. Most people do it themselves, and that's perfectly fine to do that. It's not a hyper complicated process. It becomes complicated when consulates refuse to act. I know in other types of litigation, for example, in the fiancé visas, we've individually sued consulates and consular officers. We have not done that in the DV context, but we will in this lawsuit be identifying those consulates which have adopted a position that they're not going to do DVs. We're going to name names as part of that process, but it is the Department of State that and Secretary Blinken who are being sued here. Although I guess we could technically name Jane and John Doe consular officer extraordinaire.
We haven't made those decisions. We may do that.
We may do that. So if you've got your consul, it's just basically, we want to know too, because there are 192 consulates around the world. And I don't know how many in the DV, 100, 110, 120 in the DV context. If your consulate has something on their webpage that says, we don't do DVs, take a screenshot and email it to us. That's very useful to us. Don't just send us a link, but send us a screenshot so we can capture that in time and we can show the court, hey, this is going on. Those kind of facts are very, very persuasive to a judge. It's not us telling the judge what we saw or heard. It's what literally they published as part of this. Should we take some questions? And I don't think there's a large number of questions because we've covered a lot of stuff, but Jack is on here. I don't know who Jack, how are you? I'm assuming you've seen the last visa bulletin with zero increase. If someone participating in suits gets number, the visa bulletin I'm looking at has large increases. So I don't know which visa bulletin he's talking about.
Well, we do have we have asked for a reservation of DV numbers in both the DV 2020 and DV 2021 and have been successful with Judge Maida and at least getting a partial reservation of numbers. The judge has basically used a formula, which is not really, we have some issues with the formula, but he he tries to basically come up with this notion of what would have been, what they should have done, taking COVID into account on there. So that's why what Chuck was saying with regard to what's happening on the media relative numbers is so relevant for Judge Mehta in particular. So that being said, if we get to the September, and it's very possible the judge will, wait until late in the year and see what the government's doing before he issues a decision. But I would expect that if it's Judge Mehta and he's taking a consistent policy from DV 2020 and DV 2021, there will be a reservation. The question is how large it will be, what percentage it will be of the numbers that are still left.
Great. Jack also mentioned this lawsuit argued the same principles. No, they're different. These are very different issues. And I think Aaron walked through that very extensively earlier.
And on Greg's point on the formula that the judge has used, I just wanted to point out that if he finds that relief is warranted in the reservation of visas, which we will ask for, assuming that they can't actually process the visas like they should, if he finds relief is warranted and uses the same formula he used in Gomez, then he's going to order 51,998 visas issued, because immediate relative issuance is exceeding pre-pandemic levels. So there could be we hope that there could be a big reservation if they continue to not process during the actual fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard a whole bunch of apocalyptic shouts from the Department of State just now about that statement. Jack, can this benefit those in the middle numbers? Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, during the worst part of the pandemic, they made everybody current. And everybody knows now. I know anybody who's got a brain who's does DV case is following Britt Simon on Twitter and YouTube and watching his stuff, because he knows this stuff back and forward. But one thing that really came out is these cases are not done in case order. They're not done in number order. Now that a couple caveats to that. The reason it wasn't done in number order was because the Kentucky Consulate Center, which could possibly be almost as poorly run as the U.S. Immigration Service, was basically saying, hey, your number is relevant, but only if you got us your documents. Well, everybody sent their documents in. They just weren't getting to the documents. But if you were an early document sender, and we've said this in many of our public forums before, if you're a DV 2022, you should have sent your documents in July and August.
Right.
And then, of course, KCC said, hey, we're not doing documents anymore. So presumably they'll be using a straight number system. Unclear. That is wildly unclear. That'll actually be part of the lawsuit too, because now we have all this great evidence from the KCC from the previous years that we can go on as well. But I think mid-range numbers, unless you're like at the tail end of this thing, I mean, I think you've got a really good chance. One thing I don't know, Greg, and I was going to ask Rick Simon this aside, do we know how many people were selected this year? I haven't been able to find that number. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Last year was almost a record number of people selected, upwards of 130,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think if like what Aaron was talking about before, Britt is saying it's 119,000. I think they choose a number. They choose the number based on what they think it will take to yield the maximum usage of the DV program, and that I think there probably were some assumptions built in that because of COVID that people were going to more likely abandon their applications. I mean, you can make arguments that it's more likely that they might want to pursue their applications if things are topsy-turvy. But that's, So he's saying actually they dropped it. Last year was 132,000 during the height of the pandemic. This year was 119,000. So that's so I guess somewhat less competition for people for those numbers this year.
Is the number 119 for DV 2022, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't find it anywhere. Jack really asked a great question, and about, just so you know, we tried to get this done sooner, this video. We just couldn't get our schedules together. We've got several other pieces of mass litigation going on that had deadlines. But we'll talk about this and we'll let you know. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, we probably will give a break, for people that have signed the engagement letter that, that haven't made the payment yet, we will we usually give a little bit of accommodation there if there's if they tell us it's still their intention to be in the suit.
Yeah, so that's not a problem. Thanks for bringing it up, Jack, and we will make that clear on the website. But thank you very much. You're right. We should have done this sooner. We did announce it sooner. We just didn't do a dedicated live stream sooner on this. But you're right, and we'll put that out on the FAQ page. Slava, in step 4 of registration, is that important to write the extended story of harm resulting from a delay? I really don't know what Slava's talking about.
No, she's talking about the declaration.
Oh,
the declaration of app, and is it? No, you don't need to. No, you don't need to go on and on. We basically want like a paragraph.
Yeah, 2, 3, 4 sentences. That's it. We do not lead your life story. Although, if you've got a great life story, we'd love to read it. Ayub, Africa, 38K. My case probably won't get current. Is this lawsuit profitable for me? Well, it was current last year in June. So, that it's your call. We can't, again, as Aaron said, there are no guarantees. We do know this. If it does become current and you're not a plaintiff, then you're not going to get the benefits we're fighting for our clients for. It's not a class action. Is that right, Aaron?
Yeah, let me address this because it's a calculation that every single person needs to make whether they want to join litigation, right? I mean, obviously it's your hard-earned money that you're putting up. What you're getting, in our opinion, is an increased chance that your case will be processed. Now, does that mean that people with a high case number will definitely be processed? No. But let me give some examples from 2021. We got 2 separate orders from Judge Mehta in 2021. The first was September 9th. And what it said was, Department of State, your policies are illegal. Process as many as you can in good faith before September 30th. That was not limited to plaintiffs. They processed a lot more for everybody. And even before that, I always like to tell people, even before that order, the Department of State, after they get sued, they're trying to create a better record for the judge. So even just the process of litigating will get more or can get more cases going in general. But then the September 30th order, the judge said, okay, I am going to reserve visas, but only for named plaintiffs. And so there, you don't benefit from free riding, from just staying on the side and hoping the program works better because of other people's litigation. So it's a calculation that you make. Obviously, it's going to be different for every person, and we just want to provide the information, and we hope that you're able to join and you decide that it might be worth it for you. But we understand for some people it isn't.
It's also hard to predict, even with the same judge, what they're going to do from one case to the other. So I mean, we know in the DV 2020, all of our plaintiffs were, except for a very small number, like maybe a half a dozen or so, that they all got their green cards mostly before the end of the fiscal year, largely because the way the judge structured the order in that case. And then in DV 2021, he did it differently. And it was the plaintiffs in that case are basically, mostly still waiting and didn't get the adjudication, even though the judge has already made a reservation of numbers that should benefit a substantial number of them. But, it's, again, we say it over and over again, litigation is unpredictable. So we can't say for sure, even if we win, exactly what victory, how a win will be structured by the judge.
I wanted to add something too. Filing this litigation is for you, our clients, but it also has a greater purpose. Our Congress, who makes our laws, is broken, and I don't anticipate any real changes to our immigration laws. I don't know, for another decade. Who knows? But so litigation is the only mechanism we have as outsider systems. We're not in the executive branch. It's the only mechanism we have to affect change or to force change. And so by doing litigation like this, you benefit yourself, we believe. But more importantly, I think you actually benefit those coming after you. Now, Department of State is intransigent. They are slow to learn. They are slow to adapt. I can't explain to you why. but I will commit to continue to bring them before the federal courts until they learn the lesson that you have to follow the law. And this is what's, I think, hopefully I speak for the group when I say this. The reason that we do this is because this angers us. The government is not following the law. We are held to the law. Clients are held to the law. Heaven forbid you should do one tiny thing, one itty bitty tiny thing, and they'll deport you from the United States. But the government, just do whatever they want. Yeah, do what I want. They're like a 13-year-old boy. I'll just do what I want. That's illegal. And because we're lawyers, we can do something about it. So, I mean, that's my pitch on why you should be a plaintiff to hold these guys accountable. Britt, thank you. I love having Britt Simon. He said, good morning. Be careful about the assumption that regions will go current. You're right. I only have the last several years of data to look at. Britt is also right. He says, the data is clear. They should not go current. I agree. The last 3 years. I can't figure out. And that's why I want to ask Charlie Oppenheim in Zach's meeting with him, why are these going current?
All right. Charlie is not, he's retired. So
but he'll know.
No. But he's the one guy that actually knows how it all works.
Right. Charlie Oppenheim is the man.
He has kindly agreed to be on a podcast with Zach. And he's going to answer questions about how, what's happening behind the scenes, because he's only been gone for a couple of weeks. So there are not too many changes that can happen in a couple of weeks.
December 1. I think he ended before. I think December 1 was his last day.
Right. All right. But in any case, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about with Charlie. We're talking about the retired Charlie. We know. So
basically, Charlie for me is Oz. He's Oz. He's the man behind the curtain. He's the guy. He's got the machine and puts the bubbles up. That's the guy. I don't know who it is now. Do we know? Have they identified his successor?
I'm wondering if he's going into private practice.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. We should talk to him.
We hope he has a really smart protege who understands the system, or we're going to see even more chaos.
Trey Yates, great Trey, good to see you. Right in the DV22 it is all repeats like go, so that all visas should be issued, no random. Again, we will seek visas for all of our clients who hire us. That is our goal. I think it's still surprising to us, which is why we appealed the judge's decision. It's still surprising to us that he limited the relief of plaintiffs in the way he did. It's still surprising to us because I don't think he had to do that. So
I can tell from as well from some of these, if we have some people here that have won both DV 2021 and DV 2022. We know anecdotally, we've heard from a few of those people, and I'm wondering, Britt would probably be the one who would know this. Is it just that people are jaded and they receive far fewer applications for the DV 2022 program than they have in past years? So everybody's odds went up of getting selected. That would be my guess, as far as, because it was so rare in the past that you saw somebody that actually won the lottery twice on there. And it just seems anecdotally, we keep hearing from people who tell us that.
Well, as I told you earlier, Greg, one of these people that contacted me told me they won in 20, 21, and 22. I don't know what the odds of that are, but
no, we need to take them to Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's right. They got to win. And somebody just asked about DV 2020. We have no news. We've updated that on Tuesdays in our.
We're saying that is not my theory is not correct. That there have been just as many applicants, so we just have met some lucky people.
Paul, good to see you. Hello, Paul. Hope you're doing well. Britt Simon says you need to argue that the government deliberately suppressed the issue of visas. Yes. Oh, that's a great argument because of the way it progresses the visa bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to develop that argument a little bit because we need to know. And actually, maybe we can get an affidavit from Charlie. And is he conflicted? Can we hire him as an expert witness? I don't know. Might be an interesting tale. Jack, you said you will ask the court in this case related to ongoing cases, which would direct lots of, his theory 30% for TV. We are aware of judges. Well, keep in mind, judges' theory on that was related to the immediate relative visas.
Right.
There was a method behind his madness. He didn't just pull a number out of thin air.
Right.
But again, we don't control the visas, and we are required by rule to identify related cases. It's just, we have to do what we told you we're going to do. And they could have signed it. Somebody, Judge made him. May say, enough, basta, man, basta.
I think that you're right. That it's that in this, we may actually, Judge Mehta may be the perfect judge for DV 2022, using his prior math theory based on. I mean, if he doesn't change the formula, then he should be giving a whole lot more.
If he is assigned, I would imagine he's not going to be super happy to see us again, and not because he doesn't like us, but because
he loves you.
Yeah. I really like Judge Mehta. I do.
Yeah, I think
should we complete the declaration on our own? What benefits will it have? Will it be used as is, or will you add your professional way of explanation? Lily, James, you want to address that?
So the declaration we have created a nice little app for, so it asks questions that are relevant to what we want to make sure the judge sees, and then it spits out a declaration incorporating the information that you give. So if you write one on your own, it won't necessarily have all of the information that we need. We also cleverly tie that app into our database so that it gets all of your relevant information into our database, so that we don't have to send our plaintiffs 100 emails saying, hey, what's your number? Hey, how many derivatives do you have? So you all can say, I'm not sure if we're submitting all of the declarations to the court this time around. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, depending on the case type. And
really, what a plaintiff could do is go through and do the declaration app, and then you're going to get it's going to generate a document that you're going to have. If you want to take that document and modify it and add more narrative in there, it will have, for example, there's some wording at the end that you have to swear, an oath. There's some information that the government needs to have on case numbers and things like that. But if you want to take the declaration that the app generates and modify it to add more narrative, you can do that. That's fine with us. We just created this to make sure that everybody is giving us the basic information that we need for the case.
Just make sure if you do edit the declaration, and as Greg says, that's fine if you review it and decide you want to make changes, make sure to send us your edited declaration, right? If you edit the Word document, send it to Gracie Roper is our awesome assistant here at Siskin Susser, who's helping us with onboarding. Her email should be copied on that confirmation that you receive when you fill out the declaration. So make sure to send to her if you have edits, or you can send it to, are y'all receiving at that info@ImmpactLitgation?
Sure.
Is that a good alternative?
Simon says, look at March. Simon, I was looking at the Visa Bulletin, not the interview website. The Visa Bulletin is not out for March yet, of course, but I know that the interview site does have interviews perhaps set up for March. We'll take a look at that separately. But Greg, I did find the number of applicants for DV 2022. It is crazily lower. I mean, like 40% lower than previous years.
Yeah.
And that's a bizarrely, I guess it's not surprising given the bad publicity that went on about the DV program, and of course Donald Trump's statements about the DV program. All right, let's see. The Visa Bill made a tiny increase for March interviews. Okay, so what he's saying is there was a big number jump, but only a small number of interviews scheduled.
Right.
Sherazad Khalaf, hello. My case is not current yet. I thought it would be current, but it did not happen. I would join the lawsuit with current all. Will I get a refund? Great question, Aaron.
No. We will be working to file the case, and once the case is filed, there won't be a refund. So if like the FAQ say, if you're looking for a refund, then don't probably this isn't right for you. I will say that on the case numbers, another time I'll go back to the example of last year. Judge Mehta's reservation last year was not dependent on whether somebody had a current case number. Now, of course, everybody was current, so it's a little bit different. But I'm not so sure that a lot of people are going to be frozen out, like we talked about before, because their number never becomes current. It could happen, and if that happens, then some plaintiffs might might not benefit from the litigations, and whereas some do benefit, but it doesn't mean that they'll get refunded.
Great. Britt says they could hold back the visa bulletin and moot out the case for the majority. Guys have to challenge the visa bulletin itself. Well, now that we have a source that's no longer employed by the government, who's the expert on the visa bulletin, we'll have to figure out how we can do that. So Josad also back again. My case is not high, but has not been current yet. I hope it will be soon. Oh, that's the same question he asked before. Paul Boujabar, Otves, will you put pressure on embassies to start interviews for DVs? Greg, we're going to put pressure on interviews on embassies?
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the point of the litigation.
Yeah. So I think once we file, I think we'll see a jump in interviews because we're going to start identifying embassies who, have publicly said they're not interviewing DVs. Beirut does, in fact, have its own special set of problems stemming from a couple of years ago and the port accident. But there's a big issue here. All right, Marina Shadakat. I won DV 2021. I'm currently living in the U.S. I-94 expiring in February. I have an appointment in Belgium in 3 weeks to apply for a spouse visa. So I mentioned I'm a DV lottery winner.
Does that say spouse I visa or?
My guess it's I don't know. I don't
L
know.
Visa.
We don't know what visa. We don't know what visa she's getting a spouse visa for.
It's an I visa
or L visa maybe.
You have you have to disclose it if you're.
Yeah.
I believe you have to disclose it. It's not a question of whether should you. It's like the question. I think the State Department takes the position that that entering diversity visa has to be disclosed.
Yeah, she says it's a spouse journalist visa, so that's the
Yeah.
I.
Yeah, so I think that it needs to be mentioned. I don't think you have a choice if you're doing that.
Hopefully, your lawyer is telling you the answer to that question. I hope. Slava, how much legal is that KCC processing most of the cases on DS date and only a very small amount on case number order? Well, there isn't a DS date supposedly anymore, right? It's just, well, I guess it is. You have to get your DS in. So yeah, how can they process? I mean, I'm going to defend the KCC for a second. If they're not asking for documents, they should never have asked for documents, but I'm going to defend them a little bit. How can they set you up for an appointment if you haven't completed the DS date, the DS 260? And so, they're not going to reorder cases. And keep in mind this, there are people who won the lottery who don't want to immigrate. They don't want to immigrate, but the KCC doesn't know who they are. So the KCC says, okay, you won the lottery, but are you interested in immigrating? The only way they know who is interested in immigrating is by who sends them DS 260. So I think there's a logic to doing it by 260 day. I don't think there's a logic because that's controlled by you. You control the DS 260 day. It's not by the document submission, which they control because they can sit on it for 2 months. So that's the end of my defense of the KCC. Minan Eleganzori, my case is 1,000 Africa, submitted 15 May, asked to unlock 30 May, unlock 5 August, resubmitted same date, until there's nothing and no mail, no second. What's my situation now? Sounds like you're the guy who should be joining this lawsuit. That's your situation now. Because, I mean, you didn't say which country you're in. So I don't know which country you're in. So it's impossible to tell you, are you in Yemen? Well, guess what? They're not going to issue any visas in Yemen. You've got to get to their country. And by the way, that's something we should add. If you are in a country like Iraq or Afghanistan, you need to get a third country now. You need to be emailing other consulates if they will take your case. You need to do that now. You don't need to be waiting for some magical time.
Right.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Lots of good comments. Judge Britt said he would take Judge Maida anytime. So there you go. The declaration that Lily was talking about is for DV 2022. It's in the declaration maker. How different is your lawsuit from the Jesse Bless lawsuit?
Yeah, I think that their group is doing a DV 2292 suit as well. But I don't know anything about it. I mean, I haven't seen anything about it other than
hearing about it.
You got me. I don't know. First time I've heard about it.
I guess the difference is we have
our litigation is not dependent on other people's litigation. So I would suggest you go with the guys with experience if you're going to choose. That's just me though. Let's see a couple things here. Britt dropped off here. Gilmira, I'm in a lawsuit. I have a small case, 4,000. The invitation for interview arrives early. Will this negatively affect the issuance of a visa?
So that's a question that we get sometimes where people like, I mean, I think the question is somehow can you be punished for being for litigating?
Oh, no.
Right.
No.
Historically been the opposite.
No, that's actually not the case. I don't know. Whoever this is, I don't know. I would most likely relocate to another country and change my consulate to enter into litigation. Is that going to be a problem? No, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
No, because the Department of State, KCC, they track you by your number. They don't track you by which consulate you're going to in the end of the day. Our man in Egypt. Egypt has historically been a problem on the DV the last several years. So, again, probably one of the consulates will explicitly point out. And Gulmira, you need, first of all, it's no problem at all because they've told you need to go to a different consulate. So you've already been informed, so it's no contact at all.
Right.
All right. We're coming up at the end of our show today, our live stream here. Thank Lily for jumping on. Thank James. And although James didn't say anything, I don't know why. You can jump him in. Thank Jana as well. Greg and Aaron. You guys have any last words of wisdom here for those thinking about joining the litigation?
No, I mean, but we've, I feel like we've learned a lot from the last 2 years, these cases, and take that experience in with us. And I think that I'm optimistic that we're going to get some pretty good results.
Great.
I think every time the judge sees, hey, I ordered you to do this and you didn't do it the next year. I saw the same case the second year. Well, each year is a little different, but I saw a similar situation the next year. I ordered you to do something about it. You promised you'd work in good faith. And what happened the third year? I mean, the government is starting to look more and more like they're just ignoring or evading the judge's orders, and federal judges don't like that. So that's
I want Judge Axelrod on my case is what I want. That's what Justice Axelrod would be even better, by the way.
I think I've already been too prolific on Twitter to be nominated to any federal agency, much less judiciary, but thank you for saying so.
Now, there are two last questions. When do we expect a decision? Whenever the judge rules on it. Obviously, we're gonna ask for reservation, so there likely will not be a final decision until after near the end of the fiscal year. But we will be seeking an interim decision in a PI shortly after filing on this case. So to get them moving forward. All right.
If folks missed the beginning of the video, a PI is a preliminary injunction. While the lawsuit is ongoing, we say to the judge, hey, this is time sensitive. We know we're not totally done with the lawsuit yet, but please tell the government to do the right thing in the meantime.
Let me jump into and say, in each case, it's different, and we analyze the facts on the ground, what's going on at the consulates, along with how much time is left to the end of the fiscal year. So, for example, in Go last year, we did not do a PI. We went straight to summary judgment. This year, we may decide that a PI is more appropriate, like Chuck said, but we will do whatever is most appropriate to get the relief we think that our clients are entitled to as soon as possible.
Correct.
When the judge is going to rule, we can't control that.
You're welcome to pay in euro, especially if you're paying the exact same amount. I mean, that's great. Here's the question. I don't know the answer. Do you have to make a credit card payment from Europe? Are you getting the payment immediately? I don't know. I assume so.
No, it's his system.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. As long as you have the payment, you're fine.
It takes takes a little bit of time.
It's the Go plaintiff.
Oh yeah.
We're a 2021 winner, 2022 winner. I would like to feature that person as the lead plaintiff in the case.
There you go.
Because it's got to be good luck.
Can I just make a word about payments, Chuck?
Yes.
I know every lawsuit that we do, we have people emailing us saying, did you get my payment? Did you get my payment? Sometimes it does take a little bit of time, especially for the ACH. Takes a day or two to go through. The credit card takes a couple of hours to go through. We know a lot of you are in Africa or Europe or Asia, where, you know, when we're processing during the day, it's already nighttime for you. So if you make a reasonable effort to pay before the deadline, and we, you know, and it takes a little while to process it on our end, we're not going to punish you. If you've done your engagement letter, you've done your declaration, you've made your good faith effort, we're not going to say, sorry, you were 3 seconds late, or sorry, we didn't see it.
That's one of the reasons why we've started this also a little bit early. This, you know, is to give people time.
Here's the final question, because this question summarizes the entire lawsuit. I have a low number in the EU. I haven't had my, I guess, their appointment letter yet. When will they start working normally? That's the purpose of the whole lawsuit. Thank you very much for summing that up. Pound 7 says he in fact did win twice. Look at that. Okay. We'll put the information about the extended payment period. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. On Tuesday at noon, Greg and Aaron and teams will be back live to give you an update on all our pending litigation. Thanks a bunch.